All right, you are live. It tells me when I'm live. Very good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new kind of podcast. This is the first time I'm doing this kind of podcast on my channel, but it's not the last. And I call this podcast Educational Bar Podcast, as I already have Inspirational Bar Podcast. So this is the first one of Educational Bar Podcasts. And I created them because I wanted to know more about spirits, more about actually it's more about spirits, and we will see what this podcast will turn on its way. But the first podcast is going to be about spirit, and I'll tell you a short story because that's probably why I created this podcast as well. And today we are going to have a podcast about cachaça. And my personal experience with cachaça is very interesting, as I've been a bartender for more than 12 years. And of course, I knew caipirinhas and cachaça, but I was never paying a lot of attention to this drink. And a couple months ago, I guess, I wrote to one guy who I saw on Instagram. He's working with very interesting cachaças. And I wrote him if you could send me some samples to taste, to see, because I'm doing this channel, and he did. Surprisingly, he did, and I was very happy. And when I did a tasting and when I did a video on caipirinha that you can find on this channel, both of them, I really, first time I fall in love with a category. I mean, with a drink, some kind of drink category, I could say, because there is a lot of drinks I like, but when I tasted this cachaça, I just fall in love with cachaça in general, I guess, because and I fall in love with our cachaça. And when everything started, when I just started to look for more cocktails and more information on cachaça, and fortunately, I know a guy who knows a lot about cachaça and who sent me this cachaça, and today I'm very proud and very glad to talk to him and to present him to you and to bring this podcast to you and this education. And today we will know everything about cachaça. So I present you a guy, I call him cachaça master, Pete Nevenglosky. I hope I pronounced good. Yes,
Pete? You did it right, man. Yeah, great to be here. Excited for you to do it. Same journey that we were on is discovering this amazing category, which is over 500 years old. Knew very little about it, even as my business partner and I, Nate, were pretty steeped in a lot of spirits categories. We're just amazed how little is available, how little information is available, and kind of fell down the rabbit hole. And what was a side project, now here we are, right? So super excited. We're all about education. It's always, I think, the best part of what we do as founders of AVUA is introducing people in the US and Europe and other parts of the world to this category that they know so little of. Or maybe they've had an industrial cachaça, they've had a caipirinha sometime and it was just okay and it wasn't very remarkable. To kind of open the door to the depths of the history and the identity and the ways it's produced is always really exciting. So happy to do that with you, for sure.
So that's what I would really love to do, to know, because I already listened one of your educational podcasts on some other stream. I don't remember which one now, and then I got this idea that I really need to bring it to my channel and to listen once more, because the more you listen, the more things stays in your head. Right. And to ask questions, what I will have, of course, I will ask questions if I will have after the presentation, because I really would like to know more about this category, and I believe many people don't know much about it, because it's not so popular as whiskey, rum, even cachaça is kind of rum, as I know now.
Right.
But I mean, or tequila or other big categories. So Peter, now I'm giving a part to you, and tell us everything you know about cachaça.
Well, how many hours do you have? No, just kidding. What I'd love to do is actually, and I haven't done this before, but I'd love to start with a video. So we shot in depth all the elements of production that we do with AVUA, which is at a distillery that's a third-generation distillery. It's a woman distiller named CACHACA in Rio State. It's about 4 hours outside of the city of Rio. We shot this video. We're super stoked about this video. And then the pandemic hit, and we decided we wanted to hold off on releasing it and getting all that out because we really wanted to focus on highlighting the bars that we work with and helping them get the word out about what they're doing. So I'm going to start with a video, which is going to go pretty in depth and let you guys really see what's happening in our production as a way of kind of describing cachaça production in general. And then we'll go backwards a little bit into the history, etc. Sound good?
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
Great.
let me put it on.
Yeah.
All
right.
My friend Martin Kate always says sugarcane is the magical grass. And it's true. It can be something that you can have food out of or drinks out of. It's something you can give to animals. It's something that has so many uses. So cachaça is made from fresh pressed, cut, fermented, and distilled cane. Cachaça itself is earthier, it's drier, it has very much a sense of place. And the process is so historical and been done this way for so long. Cachaça is one of the earliest spirits in the New World, maybe the earliest. It's very impressive to have this process and still be able to produce decent quantities with great quality. The beauty is in the simplicity, I think. Mineral water flows down and powers a water wheel that powers the crusher that churns the cane. There's a fermentation for 24 hours with airborne yeast, so ambient, naturally found yeast. The spent cane, the bagasse, fires the still, and the rest is gravity fed. So there's no electricity used in this process. And then there's a single distillation in an alembic pot still. We then put that cachaça into different vessels. For the prata, the unaged, it goes into stainless steel to rest, to solidify. If you go to the area where AVUA is made, it's in a massive forest with thousands and thousands of different species of plants. And many of them they've used for hundreds of years at this point to age this spirit in. And so today there's 30 different types of woods they use to age cachaça. And they taste so different. Cachaça is aged in 30 plus types of wood. So we have French oak, which was kind of the first type, but then many native woods that we work with, including Amburana, Balsamo, Jequitinhonha Rosa, and Tapi Noir. And these barrels have really unique flavor profiles to them. They are larger, 3,000, 5,000 liter barrels with no toasting or charring. So they impart this truly unique flavor to the cachaça. The woods give a sense of place, which is unique. Some of these trees, which make the barrels, which have the distillate, which go into someone's glass, have historically come from the farm where they produce AVUA. So when you start to taste through these things, that to me is the magical world of cachaça. So the farm is a magical place. It's incredibly beautiful, very remote. Joining us on this trip are a few key bartenders, bar directors, or owners of some places in the US, and then some rum enthusiasts.
We are right now in the middle of the mountains in Brazil.
We're in the farm and distillery that actually makes AVUA CACHACA. What's nice to see in a real proper artisanal cachaça setup is that techniques were created hundreds and hundreds of years ago that are actually just as smart and logical today. For example, just designing your distillery to take as much advantage of gravity as possible. Cane press on the highest level, fermentation on the next level down, distillation on the next level down, so you're minimizing energy usage. Start by tasting it neat. Enjoy it because it really helps capture the essence of the raw material and really captures the wonderful vibrancy and grassiness and fresh sweetness of sugarcane.
And I think cachaça brings that. It brings like this green earthiness terroir to a spirit that is something new, and I think at this time and age is something that's really exciting.
We really like to think about each mark as different. So the Prata versus the Amburana versus the Balsamo, they express themselves so differently in cocktails. I really like to have people try them in classic cocktails. A Prata with a Negroni is an unexpected but really interesting profile. Amburana in a Manhattan. Again, it works, but it plays differently. Balsamo in a last word or a gin style cocktail. So our mission is encouraging people to think beyond this one drink that everyone knows, to start by playing with classics and go from there, and to really understand how it can perform.
I definitely see the cachaça as a key component in cocktails when it comes to complexity, depth, and different notes.
Also, in exploring all the different notes, like the Amburana is probably one of the products that we use the most. It's this indigenous wood from Brazil that has almost like a dusty, cinnamony, slightly vanilla quality to it. It's almost like a cocktail in a glass.
And getting that experience as if you're on the farm in Carmo in Rio de Janeiro, like just eating a piece of cane. And that's something that, you might be sitting in New York, you might be sitting in Chicago, you might be sitting in Mitte in Berlin, and you're going to have the same experience, this magic grass in one little dose. And help express what this little slice of Brazilianness or Brasilidade for the world.
All right.
Very interesting. You know, my saliva started to get in my mouth, you know, and yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Would really love one day to see that, all the process and everything, you know. Yeah, cool.
Such an amazing place. Really, really beautiful and remote. And that's, I was excited to share that with you because obviously, you know, we'll get into the nerdy stuff here. I'm going to get this deck up. But for me, just, you know, literally tangibly, like this is a product of the earth. It comes from this really remote, really beautiful place. It comes from a tradition hundreds of years old. And it's pretty exciting to see that.
True, it is very much.
Let's get this up.
All right.
How are we doing on that? Cool. Perfect.
Okay.
So yeah, funny thing is, looks like I'm wearing the same shirt as I had in the video. I promised I do have some more shirts.
You know, Steve Jobs had only, it seemed that he had only one sweater and one pant.
Good idea. Spend zero time thinking about what you're wearing. Let's see if we get there.
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah. So I guess a little intro on us. Drifter Spirits is the name of the company that Nate and I founded. And AVUA was the linchpin of that. But really, it's about scouring the world for historically relevant, high-quality spirits for the modern bar, whether it's at home or the bar. And it's, you know, really, really amazing stuff and telling those stories. We actually have an aquavit as well called Svol, which, you know, we should talk about at some point. But really, again, another massively interesting category, tons of history.
Okay.
Really fun project.
Maybe we will make one more podcast. Definitely.
Yeah. So this is this image here is from Milk and Honey. So we had the fortune of meeting Sasha Petrosky at a coffee shop in the West Village before launching, and had a bottle of Amburana out. It was a mock-up bottle, and he was just kind of eyeing it. we ended up having a conversation. It was like a 20-minute conversation about prices and sourcing and all this. And I didn't know who the fuck he was. And he wrote down his email, petrosky.sasha@gmail, and we were like, oh my God, wow. So we ended up preview launching the brand at Milk and Honey in the spring of, well, I guess it was January of 2013 when he was moving the space to 23rd Street. So it was literally a construction zone. So that is like the bar, the first time people saw the new Milk and Honey, which unfortunately didn't last very long. The building got bought out, but really an amazing way to introduce it. And it was incredible that he kind of, you know, endorsed us and took a chance on that. So a lot of the reason that we're here, we've had all these amazing bars doing rad stuff with it was that moment, honestly. So let's start at the beginning. What I want to talk about, you referenced it earlier with rum, is cane, right? So sugar cane spirits. Cachaça is a sugar cane spirit. It's from cut, pressed, fermented, distilled cane, as you guys saw in the video. Not molasses, but there's interconnectivity. There's traditional connection. They're similar but different. So really, I like to talk about it as holistically sugarcane spirits with traditions that are different, as well as you might talk about agave spirits, right? And then you have tequila and mezcal and sotol, etc. Is really understanding that in that way. You know, they're not off on an island from each other. So cane originates from Southeast Asia, migrates over to Africa, gets picked up by the colonial powers and brought to the New World. So it's not indigenous to Central or South America, although it's very well suited to it. A little bit of a history here. 2nd century BC, earliest evidence of cane distillation in India. 1300s in India, definitive evidence of sugarcane distillation. So this stuff is happening way earlier in Southeast Asia than it is anywhere else in the world. Europeans discover this in the 14 and 1500s. They pick up the technology of distillation from this discovery. Simultaneously with the discovery of cane, as the colonial era starts, actually Christopher Columbus is responsible for bringing cane to the Americas. So again, not indigenous, but well suited. It really goes well in these humid, hot climates around the equator. Early 1500s, Brazil is a Portuguese colony. The Portuguese bring cane to Brazil. So a lot of the history of cachaça is really intrinsically linked to the Portuguese and how they perceived cachaça, the banning of it, the repealing of it, and all this. And really a lot of these traditions, the way they kind of started at least, had a lot to do with the colonial relationships. So earliest evidence was 1516 that we have of cachaça production. By 1536, it's already being commercialized. So there's a Dutch guy named Erasmus Schetz, and the Dutch, while they didn't hold necessarily as much land, were really technologically savvy. They were huge merchants. So he brings the technology of distillation in, and very rapidly this takes off. By 1585, there's 192 operating stills. By 1629, there's 349.
Wow, it seems so many in those times, you know, like it's
very rudimentary, certainly not massive concepts, but, you know, it was really built on what there was available to drink in Brazil at the time was mostly something called bagaceira, which is kind of like a Portuguese brandy.
Okay.
It's a little rough around the edges and it doesn't travel well, right? So even producing a rudimentary cachaça on site was superior to what was being imported. And so it was, you know, as you have massive slave, you know, colonies forming, et cetera, and then you have a large workforce, everybody wants a drink, right? So, you know, this is the easiest way to do it. Early 1600s in the north of Brazil, the Dutch are kicked out, right? So the Dutch are in Pernambuco. They're kicked out by the Portuguese. They go to Barbados. So the Dutch in Barbados start the English style of rum. So this is heavy pot still, molasses, typically aged, you know, kind of funky, round, awesome rums starts here. And, you know, we'll talk a little bit about the colonial traditions. There's a lot of controversy about how to characterize rums, and there's no one way to do it properly, but it's at least interesting to understand the origination of some of these styles, and then obviously to learn your own way about where they went. But what's interesting here is what you're really talking about is about 100 years where cachaça is the only sugarcane spirit being produced in the Western Hemisphere to our knowledge. So it's in that way, it's kind of the mother of rum as we know it, right? Something important happens in the mid-1800s where cane's main reason for being is to create sugar, which creates a byproduct called molasses, and it's to create sugar to go back to the European powers, right? And the relationship, unfortunately, between the colonies and the European powers is very one-sided, right? It's taking raw goods, refining them, selling them back, right? It's a one-way relationship. And so the Europeans developed in the mid-1800s the technology to create sugar out of beets. What that does is it lessens the need for sugarcane produced sugar in the colonies. With that, you're producing less molasses. So now you have a lot of cane. You don't have the need or the creation of molasses. So effectively, what starts happening is you cut that process and you effectively cut, press, ferment, and distill cane juice. Because you're not creating molasses. Why create it just to make rum? You can make rum out of sugarcane juice. Yeah. So in the mid-1800s, in the French colonies, the agricole style comes to the forefront. It becomes the most prominent. This is typically pot distilled, high proof, very grassy, earthy rums. And that becomes kind of the go-to, right? Meanwhile, cachaça, actually, I should have mentioned this, likely, although records are very sketchy, early stage cachaça was probably some hybrid of molasses-based pot still rum production and sugarcane. But decidedly at this period, cachaça becomes, as we know it now, a sugarcane rum, a cut, pressed, fermented, distilled rum. And then the last style to come to bear would be the Spanish style, late 1800s in Cuba. The Spanish had banned the production of rum under the auspices of religion, most likely more because they're obsessed with gold and silver. So this is the last one to come online. What's so interesting about that is it's the most ubiquitous now, right? Especially in the US, when people think about rum, they think about Bacardi, right? And it's unfortunate because there is such a diversity of sugarcane spirit universe. And that's what a lot of what we're trying to say is, hey, I hope you love AVUA, I hope you love cachaça, and you find ways to use it, but you should just love sugarcane spirits. They're diverse, they're amazing, they're really unique. They could play together, there's nuances, there's differences, and all that. So that's kind of a top line on that. And, you know, there's many layers to that, and there's many complexities, and you could really go down the rabbit hole of that, which we won't do at this time, but just contextually to come out and understand the timeline of sugarcane spirits in the New World. All right, cachaça specifically. So as mentioned, 1516 is the earliest record we have, so over 500 years. Yeah. Most likely this was kind of a hybrid of molasses and sugar cane production, based on that tradition of what was available and what the Dutch were doing in terms of production processes. It was and really remains very much so a working class spirit. And unfortunately, you can't disassociate slavery from sugarcane spirits, right? In Brazil specifically, which was a huge destination for slaves, I think the biggest actually in the New World, what was happening was you talk about the triangle, right? Which involves the colonial power, in this case, Portugal, Brazil, and then Africa. And you have this kind of interrelation between those things. What was happening was cachaça was being produced in Brazil and directly traded for slaves, cutting out the Portuguese, which of course they don't like. And so the first revolt in the New World was in the early 1600s in Brazil over the banning of cachaça. that's overturned, and that's really where cachaça kind of becomes the spirit of Brazil. This is what I was kind of mentioning. So directly purchasing slaves with the cachaça production. Getting into 17th and 18th centuries, much of the cachaça is produced on the coast, and much of the development happens with the Portuguese colonies on the coast, right? There, in specific, there's this beautiful town called Paraty. It's in the south of Rio State. Highly recommend, if you go, you check it out. There's a lot of cachaça production there. And then what there also is there is a boom in this area called Minas Gerais, which is in yellow there. Rio is below it. So Paraty is kind of directly south of that. And what's happening there is cachaça is being produced in Paraty. It's being thrown on ox carts and placed in French oak casks, which is really just the way you're transporting almost anything at that time. It took months to get it in from the coast to there, and they realized it had a positive impact on flavor. So that was the initiation of, probably with many things, was the initiation of aging these spirits, right? And what's interesting is there's still a kind of a preference in general for unaged cachaça at the coast and aged cachaça in the interior, especially in Minas Gerais, which exists to this day. And that was also the impetus for this idea of, which is very Brazilian, of aging in this wide variety of woods, right? So there are 30 plus woods that cachaça is aged in.
Wow.
And I kind of describe it as like the anti-French mentality, right? Like in France, you do things a certain way and that's how you do it. Or even in, bourbon, right? There's very strict limitations. In Brazil, it's kind of like, let's try it. I'm sure some of the experiments were terrible. Some were awesome. That's why we have this amazing diverse tradition, right? What'd you say?
I say it's a way to discover something through experiments. Terrible on the way, of course.
I love it. It's more how I live my life. So, by the late 19th, early 20th century, coffee replaces sugar as the main cash crop. Cane juice, as I mentioned, replaces molasses. Cachaça, as we know it, is born. Now there are over 5,000 legitimate cachaça brands, many, many more that's just small production, somebody's uncle making something for the family. There's a production of about 1 billion liters annually. So this is the third most drunk spirit in the world, the bulk of which, of course, is in Brazil. And really still so undiscovered in the US in particular.
It's
a bit more
in Europe, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the same in Europe. It's I'm not sure about all the Europe, but where I'm from, there's no much interest in it, or there wasn't, and probably it still isn't. So
yeah, I'm really hopeful about where the interest in rum is going, in quality rum, in understanding it, in collecting really interesting things. To me, they're interconnected, right? Even though they have a different name, they come from a different tradition. They're all sugarcane spirits. So, for us, we're really hopeful that, yes, the caipirinha might be the first exposure and it's a great drink, but there's so much more to learn and experience. And those are the people that we want to get behind it.
Pete, and in this part, you say it's around 5,000 brands of cachaça. How many distilleries are there in Brazil?
I've heard something like 40,000, maybe even. It's definitely not a complete number, right? Because you're talking about, there's somewhere from 4,000 to 5,000 legitimately recognized by the government brands.
Okay.
And then you've got a ton of people who just, they have a pot still, right? And they have a little bit of cane and they make some for the family for the holidays, right? And they don't even bother labeling it,
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of that. There's a ton of that going on. Moonshine, basically. Cachaça moonshine. Yeah.
True. And one more question. Is cachaça only the drink that can come from Brazil, as I know?
Yeah, good question. So officially the definition is, it's an appellation of Brazil. It can come from anywhere in Brazil, but must be made in Brazil.
Yeah.
It's between 38 and 48% ABV. So anything above or below would be called aguardiente, which could still be the same type of product. I've seen some higher proof cachaças, they can't be called cachaça.
Okay.
And it can't include any more. It has to be cut, pressed, fermented, distilled cane juice.
Okay.
And it can't include any more than 6 grams of sugar per liter post distillation. We don't include any, but that's a big difference from a number of rums, which can include a large excess of sugar post distillation, dosage, whatever you want to call it, right? So there's not a lot of ways to hide bad cachaça, if you will, right? As there are in maybe some other categories.
Mm-hmm. All right, good. So I let you go further.
Yeah. So industrial versus artisanal. This is kind of what we're talking about. So these are both cachaças, but they're produced in very different ways. And think about it like you might a tequila, right? You have a really high volume tequila that's a mixto, that's probably got some additives, and then you've got a really beautiful artisanal tequila. Totally different products, right? So here, with industrial cachaça, you're burning the fields to clear them. You're pressing the cane whenever you get to it. The time from cut to press is incredibly important. And then you're running it through a massive column still. This is an example here. This is multi-story column still. It's a very efficient way to produce spirits. You lose a bit of the base material. You might retain some more of the impurity. Artisanal cachaça, machete chopping the cane. You're cutting and pressing within 24 hours. We do it within 12. And then you're running it through an alembic pot still. So it's a batch production where the distiller is selecting the hearts. So taking out the heads, taking out the tails, collecting the hearts by hand. It's slower, but you get a lot more kind of base character of what went into it, right? The cane character to it. So very different. You can buy an industrial cachaça for like $2 a liter at the store in Brazil, right? At the store. Yeah. Right. So imagine,
it's cheaper than water, I guess, there.
imagine being able to produce something and still make money at that. It's pretty astounding, right?
Yeah, it was like crazy.
Right.
$2 per liter.
Yeah, that's wild. So I would encourage you guys to look at artisanal cachaças. We mentioned the woods. I like to make the analogy to mezcal. In mezcal, there's different agaves. Yeah. In cachaça, there's different woods. And I think the synergies between these categories are immense, right? I mean, mezcal is only the last 5, 8, 10 years. Has anyone outside of a small area of Mexico really paid any attention to the category? It's been going on for hundreds of years. It's beautiful. It's produced in a rustic, old school way. Same here. We've got these unique woods that are associated with it. So this is actually, you saw some of the barrels. That's an Amburana barrel right there. And the way that we kind of categorize these woods, so the first type we would call a storage wood. It's limited in the amount of color, flavor it imparts. Frankly, now predominantly stainless steel is used, which is what we use for prata, right? To rest, to let some esters burn off, to kind of get more cohesive as a spirit. Resinous woods is the bulk of what we work with and what makes these things so interesting. These are, it's kind of the oil and the sap interacting with the spirit. So it's almost kind of an infusion. So Balsamo, Amburana are like this, right? The last one is reactive. This is oak most prominently. So here you're charring or toasting the barrel. You're creating an oxidative, like a chemical reaction between the spirit and the wood. So very different processes yield very different results on this. You guys saw a lot of this already, so I can kind of go over it quickly, but this is a facility you kind of saw. I mean, one, it's the middle of nowhere. It's kind of cattle country. Two, I mean, literally everything on the right, that's the water wheel that powers the crusher, the fermentation, the distillation. On the left is bottling, labeling, resting, and aging. So that's it. That's the facility, right? The family's had it since 1923. CACHA is the master distiller. She's the 3rd generation, took it over from her father. You guys saw the process already in the video, which does much better justice to this. So just a little bit about AVUA. The brand itself is rooted in 50s and 60s Rio. The bottle is inspired by architecture of that era, specifically a guy named Oscar Niemeyer. So really what we wanted to do was, there's this magical time when the world discovered Brazil, right? With Pan Am flights and bossa nova music. And we wanted to highlight this to create some stopping power and conversation about the category, right? We want people to see the bottles on the bar or at the store and ask questions about it, and want to know more and want to learn about it. And we really wanted to reflect kind of a real Brazil aesthetic with it.
Okay, cool.
This is the range. We kind of mentioned it, but the two on the left are unaged. The gray one is still strength at 90 proof. The blue one is the Prata, the kind of core at 84 proof. So it's different cut on that. All the others are aged. We have a French oak aged, and then we have native wood aged of a variety of types. And actually, we just put out this hyper limited Copan, which is
cool.
This is aged in Tapi Noir, as we do with that. That's our most limited. Then it's finished in Hardy Cognac casks. So really, really interesting. Only 600 bottles made.
600?
Go out and grab it. Yeah, 600 can never make it again.
So I guess
you can.
All gone already.
Almost gone. Yeah, almost gone. A little bit left. Yeah. That's from the last presentation. So I think that's what I got.
Yeah.
In terms of slides for you.
Yeah, it was really, really informative, and already I repeated it once more, so I got more details into my head.
Yeah.
And Pete, I would like to ask you now to distinguish what are the requirements for drink to be called cachaça, because it should be made in Brazil, should be between 38 to 48 ABV.
Right.
It should be cane juice pressed, and is there any more requirements?
One more. You can't include more than 6 grams per liter of sugar post distillation.
Oh yeah. You mentioned that.
Right. So that's it. So it's tighter than some categories where there's really very loose to no rules, but it's not so tight. There's not a technical distinguishing between artisanal and industrial. So in the same category, called the same thing, you have something that's produced very cheaply in mass and something that's produced by hand really carefully, right? And they taste entirely different. They cost a lot less to make on one side and a lot more to make on the other side. And we really believe, and you've tasted it, the quality of AVUA allows for such a diversity of cocktail application, right? So that's our whole mission, is going beyond the caipirinha. Love the caipirinha, amazing drink, but there's so much more you can do with the category, and it opens up different times of the year when you play with the age stuff, when you work with kind of whiskey classics, or it opens up different ways of thinking about the category when you go beyond one application.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't tried so much yet. Like I'm moving a bit. Made all
Take your time
on cachaça cocktails. Still discovering those classic cachaça cocktails or Brazilian cocktails with cachaça, because I always believe you have to start from the roots and then go on. And I also made a couple of cocktails. One I created myself. Actually, both I created myself. But one I created even I haven't discovered cachaça yet, as category. I made it like almost 1 year ago when I came to States. Actually, I was experimenting and made one cocktail with cachaça. Even I didn't adore cachaça so much yet, but that cocktail somehow just my heart told I need to use cachaça. I need to create cocktails with cachaça. I don't know. And it's so crazy when I see where it took me, So I already made a video with that cocktail, and it's really great. I will send you a recipe. Maybe you could use it very nice cocktail. And also I made one cocktail with cachaça, kind of gimlet, let's say. I would call it gimlet. I made a homemade banana cordial, and instead of gin, I used the prata, cachaça prata, and that banana cordial, and it's like really great, really great.
Banana is such a good flavor. I hear from a lot of people that prata, they get some banana plantain out of it. You know, it's got that kind of earthy, but yet a little bit of light fruit element to it. So those flavors are incredible together.
Banana.
And you know, another couple cocktails from the Brazilian kind of toolkit beyond the caipirinha. One is called the batida, which is a great drink, kind of flexible, but almost always involves coconut cream, cachaça, lime, and maybe another fruit, sometimes blended.
Okay, batida, because I made a video just as I don't know pronunciation, I called it batida.
No, it's okay. It's tough. It's a tough language.
I guess if Brazilian people see that video, we will say, "What the fuck?"
I think they'll understand. I mean, it took a long time to kind of get an understanding of it because, you know, speaking a little bit of Spanish, it looks familiar but sounds completely different. And the other is called the rabo de galo. It looks like rabo de galo. Yeah. Great drink.
Pronounce it delicious. When I was editing my video, I thought, okay, I'm not learning the language yet. Just cocktail. Maybe it's very nice. Yeah, I made this rabo de galo.
Rabo de galo.
I made a video. I think I uploaded it or not yet. I don't remember now if it's scheduled or already. It's very nice. It's like I call it Manhattan. It's very nice. It's very. I mean, it's more refreshing because whiskey is kind of heavy drink. And we can say lighter whiskey. This is heavier, but in general, it's more heavier than cachaça. Definitely.
I agree. The aged cachaça, you still have that base, right, of the cane. So it's not as weighty or as woody, I find, as a lot of whiskey can be. And so it's nice because you can experiment with the Amburana, for example, or the French oak in classic whiskey cocktails, and it will work well, but it will be different, right? And so, of course, it depends on what you want. But I always find that really interesting to look at the Brazilian classics, but also looking at American classics and seeing where these spirits can play as well, because the reality is it wasn't here in the pre-Prohibition era. It wasn't here in the Tiki era even. So it really wasn't a part of these kind of major cocktail movements that happened in the US.
True.
It's only now here in quality in more recent times. And that's what I think is exciting. If you're a creative bartender, to say, hey, forget the rules, like, let's see where this takes me, you know?
Of course. Yeah, I'm just in the beginning of my experimenting, you know.
Yeah, man.
Because I have so many, you know, things in my head to try to on all the cocktails, like or on all those classics where you can substitute. Actually, it's a lot. It's very wide. I just made a video on Cuban cocktails yesterday, filmed. So I was also thinking that you can, like, it's close, rum and cachaça.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
same root. So it's also very interesting to change, like, the rum. With cachaça, it will be different flavor, because I love the aroma of cachaça, especially prata. I mean, not aged cachaça. It's like a perfume for me, you know. You can say vodka is perfume too, you know. But I mean, cachaça is a good perfume.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is if you replace prata, you know, and that's this one here. If you replace prata for any white rum, in a daiquiri, a Hemingway, variety of applications, it will work, and it will be drier, and it will be a bit more complex. And that can be pretty fun. You know, it depends on what your palate is and what your expectation of the cocktail might be, right?
Yeah, true. Pete, I remember one more question. Just want to make sure. Our cachaça, as I heard, is you mentioned, is one time distilled.
Yeah.
Or distilled one time, which is distilled one time.
Yeah. Only one time.
Is this with all cachaças? Of course, if it's column still, so it's different thing. But I mean, is there some kind of requirement as well, or no? For artisanal?
I think it's prominently one-time distilled, but it is not by definition have to be one-time distilled.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, column would obviously be different. I'm pretty sure there are some who do multi-distillation, but I think predominantly the tradition is single distillation. However, you could do either. There's no real definitive kind of ruling on that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Cool. So I think I don't have any more questions at the moment because you answered all of them. I think later maybe when you go deeper in the rabbit hole, you even deeper you get more questions.
We're always here. We're here for you whenever. Feel free to shoot them our way. You guys can find us at AVUA CACHACA, AVUA. At Instagram, you can obviously find us in various places on the internet.
I will put in the description all the contacts of AVUA CACHACA. Everybody who's watching this, you just can go to description. There will be contacts. You can go straight and check out AVUA CACHACA and know more what they have to offer, because it's really a big range. I think 7 plus that one that is limited.
Yeah, that's right.
7 plus 1 different cachaças. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been fun. You know, a lot of that is telling the story of this category through all these unique marks. And it's really cool when you take Prata as the base and you go into these different woods, how that plays out. We really encourage people to try and get your hands on or try and get a flight because it's really unlike anything else. It's unlike any other category out there.
It's very amazing. It's really mind blowing. All right, so
awesome.
So I guess I'm very happy to hear all that information, and to get more knowledge about cachaça. And thank you very much, Pete, for sharing that. And if anybody have any more questions about cachaça, so just write in the comments below. I'll try to reach Pete and answer you those questions, because the more questions you have, the more we all can find out. Sometimes you just know that you don't know something when somebody else asks the question, because you don't get to that question.
For sure.
So that's how sharing the knowledge works. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching this, the first one, Educational Bar Podcast. I'll try to bring more of that kind of podcast to educate you more and all of us to know more and to become better bartenders and better people. And thank you very much, Pete. I'm really happy to talk to you. I'm really glad for your product. and I wish you good luck with this cachaça, and I'm sure we will be communicating a lot.
For sure. Thanks for having me. Good luck with this. Keep it up. Cheers.
All right. Bye, everybody.